Sup guys, I'm here to do a review, to talk about a review, talk about a movie, blah blah blah, you know. Uh, where do I start? Well, Captain America Civil War came out last week in the UK. It's out officially now in the US, I believe. And I really want to talk about that film and do a review on it. It's been a week now, and my god, what an amazing film. But before I do that, I've been trying to do a review on another film that came out about 4 weeks ago, I think. Last month. I think you all heard of it. You all heard of it, obviously. It was called Batman v Superman. Yeah. Obviously, the verdict on that film was surprising to say the least. When I watched it, I went in with the lowest expectations, knowing full well what kind of film it would be, how it would turn out like, and yeah, I watched it. I wasn't at the least bit surprised by what it ended up being. But, overall, if someone asked me if I enjoyed the film, I would probably have said yes at that time. I did like the film. But after 4 weeks and a lot of time to think, if someone asked me again, I'd be like, no, not really. I don't like the film. So, Batman v Superman. Is it a good film? No. Is it a good comic book film? No. So, it's a terrible film then. It's a bit hard to say. Again, because this is a movie that it features two of the most iconic heroes, yeah? And you'd think a film like that would be magnificent. But that film wasn't. It wasn't magnificent. It was a dud, a surprising dud. But then what do you expect when you have a director like Zack Snyder making that movie? It was to be expected. I mean, come on. It's Zack Snyder. It's not going to be that great of a movie. But if I had to think of an analogy to compare this film to, what would it be? What can I compare the film to? Shit. And no, I'm not talking about shit as in, oh, it's bad. No, because shit can be good. Because, you have those days where you either have a good shit, or you have those days where you have a bad shit. And this bad shit I like to refer to as diarrhea. Now, what's the difference between the two? Quite simple, really. A good shit is the one where, when nature calls, you gotta go, There's nothing about it. Though sometimes you do have control over whether you want to go to the bathroom or not. So a good shit consists of you sitting down, all calm and relaxed, and sometimes you'll give a little push. But, sometimes you won't. Sometimes it'll just slide out automatically by itself, fast or slow, it doesn't matter. The point is you're sitting there, you're calm, you're relaxed, it's just you in the toilet all the time in the world with you. Sometimes you'll have a book in your hand or a newspaper, or you're listening to music, and you're just sitting there taking a nice, quiet, maybe loud splashy dump. The point is a good shit is a good shit because, nothing is being forceful, it's not stressing, it's just a thing that you do, and you're in no hurry or rush to get out of there. Now, a bad shit, in this case diarrhea, when you gotta go, there's no stopping it, right? It comes at the most unexpected of times, and it's a very painful, stressful event. It's literally a pain in the arse. Quite literally a pain in the arse. Because when you're doing a diarrhea, you have no control over it. It's gonna come or it's not gonna come. But the point is, you gotta sit down there and suffer through that crap until it all comes out of your system. Now you can either get up and, after the first dump and do your own, do your thing, blah blah blah. But the point is, you're gonna be going back in there after a few minutes or an hour, and you're gonna continue to release yourself. Because this diarrhea, it's not going to go away after a minute or two. No, you're going to be in that toilet for a few hours, struggling and suffering, and the only way to get it out of your system is to sit down there and get it all out. Get it all out while you can. Otherwise, you're just going to keep going back to the toilet, back and forth until it's all out. Just sit there, take it, and suffer through it. It's stressing, it's painful, but there's nothing you can do. You can only sit there and suffer through it quietly. And once you've had your diarrhea, yeah, you're going to be exhausted and tired, and you hope to God you never ever have to go through something like that ever again. But mentally, you're going to be scarred forever. Because, you know, having a diarrhea the first time, you know you never want to experience that again. But you will. There will be times when you experience that again. Over and over again. Because as much as there's good shit in your days, you also have the days when you have diarrhea. There's nothing you can do about that. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is what Batman v Superman represents. That's what it is. That's the best way to describe it. It's diarrhea. It's stressful, it's long, it takes forever, and in the end it's just a big pile mess that just keeps piling up, and that's exactly what that film was when I was watching it in the cinemas. A steaming pile of bad shit. Now I know it looks like I'm being very, very negative towards this film, and you know what? Rightfully so, because really, as much as I want to be positive on this movie, it's hard for me to be positive on this film because there's not a lot of good things to say about it. And there are decent things in it, yes. But really, it's more crap than good. And I know what you're going to be thinking. You're probably going to be thinking, oh, I'm just a Marvel fanboy. And you're probably right. I probably am a Marvel fanboy. But let me tell you something, yeah? Let me tell you about my history with comic book movie characters in general. When I was growing up, my favourite characters were Batman and Superman, followed later on by Spider-Man, the X-Men, the Incredible Hulk, Iron Man, and the Fantastic Four. Those are the characters that I grew up with because those are the characters I would watch on TV because there were a lot of cartoons based on them or the TV shows. Me, personally, I grew up with the Lewis and Clark TV series. I loved that. I still love it to this day. You know, for me, Dean Chan, or Dean Cain, sorry about the pronunciation, he's my favourite Superman. He's my Superman of my time and age. For others, it was Christopher Reeve, and for some, it might have been Brandon Roth, and for others, it'll be, you know, Henry. For me, it was Dean. That was my Superman growing up, and my Lois Lane was Terry Hatcher. That was my Superman. As much as, for me, my favourite Batman, you know, at the time was the Tim Burton version. I'd seen the Adam West version. I liked that as well. Yeah, shocking enough, but I was a kid. I liked a lot of things back then. And there's a lot of things I hate then, but you know, that I hate now, that I still love today. But you know what? The point is, I loved those two characters. I loved Batman and Superman. My first comic book was a Superman issue, and I loved it. Superman to me was a great character, a great hero. But now that I'm a bit older, now that I've seen a lot more stuff, now that I've, you know, introduced myself to all these different characters and heroes, yeah, my tastes have certainly changed. I'm more of a Marvel fanboy. Why? Because, you know, I like the Marvel characters. For me, they're better, they're more simple, they're more, you know, they're cool, they're fun. But, you know, my favourite DC character is, and will always be, Batman. I love Batman. I loved the Nolan trilogy. I still love the Nolan trilogy. I think those three films are great. They're probably some of the best comic book movies that's ever gonna exist. Nothing's gonna beat those films. Certainly there'll be movies that will probably be better than them or in the same level, but those films are iconic. For me, those are classics, and nothing's gonna beat those. Nothing's gonna come close to that level of detail, to that level of commitment, to the characters and the story and the themes. Those films, seriously, I could sit down and write an entire essay about why those three films in particular are so good in terms of what they do for both comic book films, action genre, or in general. It's a great series, and I love what the Nolans did with that. But then you have someone like Zack Snyder coming in, and you know, what has Zack Snyder done to earn him that place to do films like a Batman v Superman movie? Let's see. He did Dawn of the Dead. He did Watchmen. He did 300. Yeah. Those films were alright, they were cool. He also did Sucker Punch. And then he did Man of Steel. Okay. Dawn of the Dead, good remake for the most part, yeah. But, you know, he had help with that since I believe George R. Romano helped with the script a bit. So really, that's mostly to do with George there. Watchmen and 300, they were both graphic novels. The story was already there, so really, Snyder had everything at hand to help him making those into films. And then you had Sucker Punch, which was his first original film. And if there's one thing we learned from that, it's that Zack Snyder cannot tell a story worth shit. Now, personally, I enjoyed that film. The visuals and action were, in my opinion, were good. And it's not an overall bad film, but it says a lot when, you know, that film says a lot about how bad Snyder is at doing story. Because if there's one thing that Snyder isn't, it's being a story director. What you need to understand, you know, about directing and films in general, is that, you know, there are various types of different directors. You'll have your visual directors, you'll have your story directors, you'll have your action directors. Now, if there's one thing that's important to have, it's knowing how to do a story. A director needs to know how to do a story first, and then a visual or action second, because in the end, it doesn't matter whether the visuals are good or whether the action is good, as long as you know how to tell a good story, yeah, along with one of the other two, then those two are going to help compensate for the other. Look at Christopher Nolan, right? He's a good storyteller and he's a good visual director. His action isn't all that great, but the other two helped deliver the action in the best way it could. It compensated for that. Zack Snyder is not a good storyteller. He's a good visual director, yes, and he's a good action director, yes, but he's not a good storyteller. And that's the first thing you need to have. The first skill, the first element you need to have as a director, as a film director. Otherwise, you're just going to be doing mediocre to pieces of crap. And that's what, you know, Sucker Punch for the most part was. And Man of Steel, yeah, I liked it. It's probably my favorite Superman movie, yeah, surprisingly, yeah. I liked Man of Steel, I liked what it did, and I liked it mostly because it gave me a Superman that was action-packed, that actually had history in terms of, you know, Krypton and that. I liked that film. I even liked the final battle, and I don't have a problem with Superman killing in that film because he didn't kill any people. He helped and saved a lot of human beings, and the only person in the end he actually killed with his hands was a Kryptonian. He never killed a human being. If there's one thing that Superman should never do is kill a human, and he didn't do that. He killed a Kryptonian, and for me that was perfectly acceptable. That was overall good and decent. Would it have been better if, you know, Superman pulled an Ichigo and grabbed Zod by the face and threw him out of the city into the nearest mountain or desert area? Yeah, that probably would have been better, yeah. We wouldn't have had all that destruction in the end, obviously, at the end, but, you know, what are you going to do? In the end, a lot of us wanted to see a Superman movie where there's total carnage and destruction, and we got that. But you can't fault Snyder for that. But, in the end of the day, it doesn't change the fact that he's not a good storyteller, and getting him to do this whole DC universe for Warner Brothers, or whatever you're going to call it, was a terrible, terrible decision. It was a terrible decision, and it's gonna cost them, big time, big time. Because if you think that Justice League is gonna be any good, you need to perish those thoughts immediately out of your heads. Because there's no way Justice League is gonna be good. It's not. Maybe decent if he can get his shit together, but the truth is he won't. Man of Steel for the most part was decent at best, and yet he learned from none of those mistakes that film did, and he repeated them in this movie. And since he didn't learn from any of the mistakes in Batman v Superman, I doubt he's going to learn from anything from that film, and, you know, make sure he doesn't do them again for this. Doing a mistake once is enough. Doing them twice, there's no third chance here. What Joel Schumacher did with Batman and Robin, it set comic book movies back nearly a decade. At least it did with Batman. And it was thanks to Nolan, to the Nolans, to Christopher and Jonathan, and, you know, Nolan's, you know, Christopher's wife, and Bale Ledger and all of those talented people that came together, they brought it back from the ashes. Now yes, obviously you had, Bryan Singer to thank for X-Men, Sam Raimi for Spider-Man. Those guys did a good job reinventing comic books with those two films. And Blade as well, let's not forget Blade. Blade had a hand in this as well, in terms of being able to make cool, dark action heroes. Yes, those films helped. Those films helped a lot. And then of course they flopped, because of the third movie curse. Spider-Man 3, X-Men 3, Blade Trinity. Good sequels, great sequels even. And then you had those third parts. And suddenly, movies went back down a notch. Then you had Nolan coming in, and he did a decent job with Batman Begins. Personally, I love Batman Begins. It's my favourite Batman movie. But then he did something with The Dark Knight that was very unexpected, and it revolutionised comic book movies in general. And at that same time, you had Marvel Studios doing their thing with Iron Man. And those two films really helped push comic book films up a notch. It took nearly 8 years, nearly a decade basically. Basically a decade, yes, because if you think about how long Batman Begins was in production, it took nearly a decade for the Nolans to bring comic book movies to a certain standard, right, that everyone would appreciate them. And Zack Snyder came with his Batman v Superman, and he's brought it all crushing back down instantly like that. And it's because of films like that that you have people going that they don't want to see superhero films anymore, that they're getting sick and tired of superhero films, because when you make a movie featuring two of the most iconic heroes together on the big screen, and you make a film like that, and it's that bad, what does that say? What does that say for the rest of them? I mean, Jesus Christ. Jesus fucking Christ, how can you screw up that badly? And that's the reason I keep saying, that's the reason I'm saying right now, hiring Zack Snyder for these films was a terrible, terrible mistake. Very terrible. Both for comic book films and for these characters, because God knows what it's going to take to make people love these characters again. Now, yeah, Batman in this movie was for the most part decent. Ben Affleck did a good job. But what about the rest of them? What does that say? I mean, what does that say about Justice League? Because truth be told, I don't think anyone really cares. No one really cares. And the problem with that is, it's not because of fatigue, it's because you don't have, it's rushed. It's literally rushed. Batman v Superman would have worked better if we had gotten a Man of Steel 2 first, a Batman solo film, a Wonder Woman solo film, and then you could have gone and done your Batman v Superman. It would have worked a lot more better, it would have been more tighter if you'd introduced certain elements in Superman's movie and Batman's movie first, and then done that. Because the way this movie is, it's basically 2 or 3 films in one. And it's a whole pile of mess that just feels like it's collapsing on the weight of the other. Let's talk about the title first, right? We want to get really into this. Batman v Superman. This movie promises a versus film. And the truth of the matter is, it's not. It's not a versus film. Because Batman and Superman don't fight in this movie until towards the end. And even then, by the end of the movie, you have them shaking hands and fighting a bigger threat. Obviously, that's where the subtitle comes in, Dawn of Justice. We knew from that title alone that this movie wouldn't be a Batman v Superman movie, but it's still considered, at least to me, false advertising, because you're promising something that's not really there. A Batman v Superman movie would have made more sense if there was more, if there was more than 1 or 2 encounters between these characters. And it doesn't necessarily have to apply to Batman and Superman, it also applies to Clark Kent and Bruce Wayne. Now, there is a scene in this film, which we've all seen from the trailers, the party scene. Bruce and Clark do meet, but that's pretty much it. Batman and Superman do meet, but it's a very short 1 minute, not even 1 minute scene, and that's it. And then they don't meet until the end of the film, where they fight, and then team up. That's not really a lot of, you're doing a movie about 2 characters, not just fighting physically, but mentally. You want to do a psychological aspect of it. You want to explore the psychology, the ideologies, but this film doesn't do that. Instead of this movie taking the time to have Batman and Superman, to have Bruce Wayne and Clark Kent explore each other, interact with each other on a human level, and learn something about the other, and do something so that it makes sense for these two characters to fight, so that when they do fight, you know, you're motivated, you understand what's going on, you can be excited, but you can't be. You're not excited because in the end both their plot lines don't really mesh well together, and when they do fight, it's not rewarded, it's not acceptable, it's unmotivated, it's confusing, and doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Now, Bruce Wayne's reason for hating Superman, yes, in a way that is acceptable. The whole idea of using the events of Man of Steel and having that be what motivates Bruce Wayne in wanting to go after, you know, Superman makes a lot of sense. Yes, that's good, that's acceptable. But the problem with that is you never take the time, the movie never takes the time to have Bruce Wayne, you know, understand the character of Superman, to explore the character of Superman. I mean, this man is meant to be the world's greatest detective, right? And by, you know, he never even finds out that Superman is Clark Kent. Now, Clark Kent finds out, you know, Bruce Wayne is Batman. He does. During the party scene, you know, there's something there, and he finds out, he figures it out, he uses his hearing, and he figures it out. But the world's greatest detective, he never does. And we never get a scene like that where he does. We never get a scene where he gets one up over Superman and shows him that, yeah, he's a normal man, but he's smarter. And we never get a scene, we never get another scene between these two in the alter ego, the normal human versions, if you will, and just interacting and trying to understand each other and what they're doing. Instead, you have a movie where Clark Kent is going after Batman for bullshit reasons when really they're not needed. And you've got Batman going after Superman for acceptable reasons, yes, but by the end of the movie they don't make a lot of sense. Overall, the whole concept of this versus fight is pointless. And it's especially pointless when by the end of the movie they shake hands and are best friends suddenly. And I'm not trying to say like, oh yeah, we knew that was gonna, yes, we knew it was gonna happen, but the way they just connect very quickly, instead of there being some sort of just a slow step by step before they can really become trusted friends. That doesn't happen. They fight, it's over, they're the best of friends. That's it. That's how it is. That's how it goes. And it's bullshit. It's bullshit because that attitude and that relationship is forced, and like I said, it's unrewarded.